So I'm back. I had a little emergency there. But getting back to what I was saying about forgiveness, forgiveness is not an event, forgiveness is a journey. I'm going to say that again. Forgiveness is not an event, forgiveness is a journey. When you choose, and I mean a sincere choice, to forgive someone who has hurt you, the act of forgiveness is one thing. And we're doing that even in faith, because oftentimes, if someone has really hurt you, you know, really don't want to forgive them because you almost feel entitled to holding on to that. But when we really look at it the way God sees it, the way He sees it is the example of Jesus on the cross. The word says that for the joy that was before Him, He endured the cross, despising the shame, and is now seated at the right hand of the Father. What He took on that cross was not for Him, it was for us. And while He's hanging on that cross, He's saying, Father, forgive them, because they don't even know what they're doing. That's the kind of love that He has for us. That's the kind of love that our Savior has for us. And if He can do that on His cross, and we say we want to follow Him, we want to be like Jesus. Yeah, we want to be like Jesus until we have to carry our cross. And this is going to help somebody. You don't get to choose what that cross is. I remember early in my marriage, and I mean within the first year of our marriage, an incident had occurred, and I was standing at the sink washing dishes and, wondering, Lord, what is going on? I know, that the way things happen, that I'm supposed to be here, but I just don't understand this. I don't get it. And I remember, and this wasn't an audible voice and anything like that, but I heard, everyone has a cross to bear. And for you, it's your marriage. And that then, it shook me, and I knew that it was God, because I knew the voice of God. But can I tell you that sometimes when you really make that commitment to follow God, it doesn't mean I did everything right. It does not mean that at all. It doesn't mean that I was every day walking around and me and Jesus just talking and He telling me everything to do. No, it wasn't like that. It wasn't that kind of party. But I do know the voice of the Lord. And it has been times I've missed it, where I thought it was Him and it wasn't. So I'm not trying to make it seem like everything I hear is God. I'm not saying that. But what I can say is that every time that I sincerely wanting to hear God, sincerely wanting to do what He wanted me to do, even when I made a mistake, He somehow made those mistakes work together for my good. I don't know how He does it, but He does. He just does. He's just good like that. And so He reminded me that throughout the course of my marriage. And when it was time, when I look back on all of the different instructions and different things that He was instructing me with along the way, on this side of it, I can see, man, God, you were, even then, you were directing me. Even then, you were keeping me. Even then, even when I messed up, y'all, I'm telling you, whether a marriage works or whether it falls apart, it takes two people. So I am by no means saying, making myself like the victim of anything. I may have been victimized, but I am not a victim. Okay, we're going to set that record straight right there. The other thing, divorce. There is a grieving process that you go through after a divorce, especially in my case. I had been with this man for 31 years, had been married to him for 30. And when it was really done, the day, August 1st, when it was done, there was a grieving. As much as I knew that it was the best thing, and as much as it wasn't so much for him, it wasn't that I was grieving him, but what it was supposed to mean. I was grieving what could have been. I was grieving what probably should have been, what I know God had in mind, because there's no doubt in my mind that he was supposed to be my husband. There's no doubt in my mind that he was supposed to be my husband. And why I can say that is because of the 4 beautiful children that came from that marriage. My children, the gifts that I discovered that I had, the things that I'm doing now. I wouldn't have been doing these things now had I not been in a position to learn how to do them while I was with him. Now, I'm not giving him the credit for it, but God said in his word that all things are going to work together for your good. So in situations where I had to be on social media, when we were doing broadcasts and things like that, I kind of took to the mechanics of all of that, and I took to it quicker than he did, and so I kind of found my niche in, I didn't realize that I could do videos. I didn't realize that I could do editing. I didn't realize it was a lot of things that I learned how to do that I just learned by doing them. Wasn't because they were required, but it was a caveat that just kind of attached to what we were doing. And I kind of discovered those things along the way. And so as it grew, God started revealing different things in me that I didn't know were there. And had I not been in the situation that I was in, I never would have discovered it. And so I tell people all the time that we have gifts and talents in us that are time released, so that we don't always know what is in us, what is inside of us, but God does. And so he will allow us to go through some things that are going to extract things that are meant to come out in certain seasons of our lives. And so that's what was happening with me. So yeah, there were a lot of things that were happening during that time. And I'm just grateful that, that I did experience that. But there was a grieving of what should have been. And when I would see couples who had gone through wilderness seasons and they're now flourishing in ministry, and I'm seeing them with the same type of goals and the same type of mission that we had, and I'm seeing them thriving. It was kind of like I'm happy for them. In no way am I ever jealous or anybody. I'm really happy. I love to see marriages work. I love to see people overcome and all of that. So I'm never ever envious of anybody's marriage. I am pro marriage. I'm pro for that. However, it when I would see it, I couldn't help but think what it could have been. What it could have been. And then the other part of that is understanding that it wasn't just me that experienced all of that. The good, the bad, and the ugly. It wasn't just me. And especially the painful parts, the trauma that was experienced during that my children were also subject to. And that for me was more painful than the actual marriage, is seeing the effects that it had on my children and is having on my children. As much as I am an advocate, if you are blessed to have spiritual leaders that are walking the walk, they're living it, they're doing it, we should by all means get with your spiritual leaders, because they have a mandate to watch over you. And you absolutely should speak with your spiritual leaders. However, and I'm only speaking from my own experience. I can't speak for anybody else. But what I've learned is that God has given us professionals, okay? When we're sick, we get prayer from our prayer circles, from our spiritual leaders. We get prayer. We get what we need. Spiritually, we get what we need. But there may come a time where you have to seek professional medical help. And we should not deny that, unless, of course, you are just led by God and you know that He has told you otherwise. The wisdom that they have, the skills that they have, that comes from God. And we will go to doctors when we are feeling some kind of things in our body that, prayer hasn't been able, I'm not going to say prayer hasn't worked, because prayer is always working, and there's always, the manifestation is what we're believing for. Even though the healing is already done, we are believing for the manifestation. And a lot of people are going through things in their bodies physically that they are going to therapy, physical therapy. They're doing all of those things because it doesn't negate their faith. It's just what we can do naturally. I tell people all the time, supernatural simply means we're doing everything naturally that we can do, and God puts his super on top of it. That's it. That's what it is. But we'll do that when it comes to our physical bodies. But when we're dealing with mental health, we're not as open to seeking emotional therapy. We're not so quick when it comes to our mental health. And that is just as important, if not more. Because as a man thinketh, so is he. And it's a shame that it's been such a taboo in the church. And I'm not saying in my church, I'm not saying that. Okay, I want to make that clear. I want to make that very clear. I'm just saying that when you see that you are going through something and you need something more, it doesn't discredit anything that your spiritual leaders are doing. It doesn't discredit any of that at all. But you have to be responsible for your own sanity, your own healing. People can lay hands on you all day long. But if you're dealing with things that are and I know that God is a deliverer. He's delivered me from many things. But we have to know that there is no taboo in seeking professional help when we need it. Now, I'm not saying go to anybody. You have to research that just like you do anything of importance. I would suggest getting professional help. What I have been dealing with, and I'm just keeping it real, is that there was a lot of residue that had spilled over into my children that I was partly responsible for. So the forgiving wasn't as easy for me to forgive myself as it was for me to forgive him. And because I have such a close relationship with my children, I didn't realize that certain things that I would do would trigger things in them. I could be speaking in this tone of voice, but to them it would sound combative. And it would trigger certain things in them. And so having to deal with the different things that came as a result of some of the uglier parts of my marriage and how it affected my children, that has been a challenge. And notice I said has been, because I know I have overcome it, but it's a continuous thing. keep in mind, forgiveness is not an event, it's a journey. We are ever in the process. And sometimes we don't realize that the person, when we're harboring unforgiveness and we're going down this list of who did this and who did that, and we're like, well, I forgave them and I forgave them. Have you forgiven yourself? Have you really forgiven yourself? And as a mother, most mothers that I know are really protective of their children. And I felt like a failure. And like I said, I'm just keeping it real with y'all. I felt like a failure. All my children are grown, but I see the residue in each of their lives by something that I contributed to. They didn't ask to be in those situations. They were there by default. And although I have apologized to my children, each one of them, I know that there is nothing I can do to change what has happened. However, in forgiving myself, I had to also not allow guilt and shame that was associated with it, and condemnation and all that stuff. I could not let that stay in me, because the enemy will keep on using that. I had something happen today with one of my children, and they were in a situation that if I were in a place financially where I could have done something, I would have. And I know that this particular individual sacrificed so much during the rough years. And, as a mom, I hate seeing my children going through stuff. I hate seeing them going through, especially when I know the sacrifices that they've made. The sacrifices they made for me, the sacrifices they made for their siblings. When my children are going through stuff and it's difficult for them, I hate seeing them go through when I know this about them. And I had to take it to God, and I said, God, look, I need you to move on their behalf. There are some things God does just because he's good. Sometimes people can be doing stuff and they may not be right in the will of God. But I read something in Ezekiel one day that it threw me, because in it, he was talking about how his people had turned and they had started serving idols, and how he restored them to the point where he was so good to them that they began to abhor the things that they had been doing, to the point where they were totally repentant because of God's goodness. They knew that they didn't deserve him being so good to them. But because God was so good to them, and the reason God was good to them was because the people who were not his were mocking them, because they knew that these were God's people. And they knew that they were held to a higher standard, and they knew that God had set them apart. And now they out here wilding and acting out and doing all kinds of craziness, and the world is mocking them. Oh, I thought y'all was supposed to be all of this, and you was supposed to be all of that, and you out here doing all of this. God said, okay, I'm going to put an end to this. I'm going to restore my people. Yeah, they was messed up. Yep, they was totally jacked up. But I'm going to restore them. And when I restore them, I'm going to be so good to them in front of all of these folk so that they're going to know they didn't deserve it because they know what they did. But I'm going to be so good to them that they're going to turn back to me anyway. So when it came to that one, I was like, Lord, I need you to show up. Because this is how you do stuff. This is how you do stuff. You're not going to have your people looking crazy. Even though we might have been acting a fool. Even though, yeah, we did forsake you for some mess. But now, these other folks is now mocking us. I thought you was all of this, and how come you... Okay, God, I need you to do something. Yeah, I said something. And because of God's faithfulness, not because of yours, but because of God's faithfulness, He will restore you. He will bless you. He will do all kinds of things to get the glory because, one, you know you didn't deserve it, and they know it too. So seeing how good He is to you will provoke them to want Him too. That brings me to something else. Rewrite your story. When I say rewrite your story, remember when I was talking about how I had that experience a few days ago where God had me on that journey, remembering all of the trauma and the different things that I had experienced during my marriage, and how He told me in that same setting, He said, now what if you had known that on the other side of you stepping in to what I had for you, that it would be this good, that you would be able to experience the things you're experiencing now. What would you have told your former self that was going through that? You know how we say, if I had known then what I know now, I would have did something different. Well, you can't change the events of your past, but you can change the narrative of your past. The story that you've been telling yourself. See, when I would tell the stories of the things that I've been through, I was telling it from the standpoint of being a victim. That's why earlier I said I was victimized, but I'm not a victim. Because had I known that there will come a day where I would be doing the things that I'm doing now and experiencing the grace of God and the glory of God that I'm experiencing now, I would have had a different attitude. See, after a lot of the things that happened, I couldn't see how things were going to get better. I couldn't see my worth. I couldn't see my value. I couldn't see any of that. And so when I started doing that, I could retell the story, but now the story is different because now woven in to those dark times is a thread of hope, is a thread of expectation, a thread of a good future, of things that I was going to do things that I didn't even know I could do. That on the other side is, oh girl, you gonna get through this. And let me tell you, I know you don't see it now. I know you don't feel like it now. I know, yeah, I was jacked up, but let me tell you what's gonna come out of this. When we retell our story, we then make better decisions and better choices, because we understand that when we experience things that are not so favorable, we remind ourselves, okay, I remember on the last time I felt like this and I didn't see how this was going to happen. God, you worked that thing out so good. I ain't even going to trip. I ain't even going to trip about it, because I already know that you got something good coming. You got something good on the other side of this. And so, you know what? What you got for me to do today? Who can I bless? Is it anybody you need me to talk to today? Because I'm not going to wallow in this. I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to turn around, but I need to have my focus on something else. So what else you want me to do in the meantime? That's how we rewrite our story. I'm going to stop right here, because I already know these are going to be cut up in chunks. And so I'm going to stop right here. But I just want to say, I hope that this has been a blessing to you. And, you know, if it is, share it with somebody else. Like it, share it, subscribe to Life After the Comma on Facebook. I need you guys to, you know, like, share, subscribe to the channel, the YouTube channel. You know, the algorithms love it, and so do I. I want you all to go on this journey, and we can do it together. Like I said, I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to be more intentional in sharing my story, because like I said, our stories are not ours to keep. They are ours to share. And if my journey can help you on your journey, then let's do this thing together. Because one thing I know for sure, we're not doing it alone, because with God, we can do all things. Okay? All things are possible. And so I just want to share that. And then also, go to Amazon. I have a group of journals, a collection of journals listed on Amazon, and I call them hope books. You know, like notebooks, but they're hope books. And each one has a different title. I have the victory. I have the overcomer. I have gratitude. I have different ones, and they're all acronyms. And they all have a scripture that also support the acronym. But the journals are created so that you can just say, for instance, you have. I had somebody tell me this is how they're using them. They have a couple of them, 2 or 3 of them, and they use, like they said, on a day that they are needing to focus on faith, they write in their faith journal. And then on days where their focus is gratitude, they're writing in their gratitude journal. And so, and they're really pretty. So you guys go on there and just click on, enter my name, Sondra Louise. Just enter Sondra Louise, and that's Sondra with an O. If you enter Sondra Louise on Amazon, it'll pull up my journals. Right now, there are 6 active on there, but there are more coming, and some other different types of books that are coming. So go on Amazon for my books, and subscribe to my YouTube channel at Life After the Comma. And then if you are on Facebook, also go to my Life After the Comma page on Facebook. So until I talk to you guys again and share with you again, I just want you to be blessed. Be your best. Just show up as you. God broke the mold when he made you. So just be you. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.